Gonna sit for us, Tori?
Yeah, but if I can get your pipes to do the 5th and Main downtown, it'd be
Please.
that much better.
You've got to, see, what's your line?
Which line? Pass the piece of paper.
No. The line with the, Groucho Marx line that you have in the Christmas
You're
celebration.
gonna get the one.
Oh,
You're gonna get the one.
I don't remember now. I gotta go back and look at this line.
But I can't remember what it was. Gee, Wally.
Draw this pirate. No, that's the wrong show.
What, I understand, you're doing part of it.
I'm doing building, yeah. At least as far as I know at this point. I got really confused last year because I thought that we were going to do that one 2 years and then switch to another one, and then we put another one in.
Yeah, I understand.
And then I didn't think we were going to go back to
No,
it.
you need to sit back, Kristen.
So,
Sit back a little bit.
well,
I may have had some influence at that point.
well,
I really thought it was the best thing ever. Okay, well,
the last,
we're ready.
okay.
Now, kiddos,
You have to
are you
understand.
all?
Oh, look at Pastor George.
You look
Look
good.
at Pastor George.
Yeah.
You feel natural. And everything.
We're just chatting. Okay?
Yeah.
You can talk
It's
to
all
Pastor
laid
George.
back here.
Yeah.
Okay.
You can sit here.
You're just a little
How did
too
you end up
wound
in
up.
church?
Well, when we moved back to Columbia City, we were doing a little bit of church shopping through the area, and we really wanted to try to find a place that had a lot of exuberance and life to it, and preferably some drama and music programs that were enticing, and we found it here.
The children's programming too. I really wanted a church that, with having so many little kids, they would be able to get involved and really learn.
Okay.
That's okay.
What do we got here? Feedback?
That may have been from,
All right. And so did you find that here?
yes, we have found that here.
Been thrilled with the children's programming and the things that the girls have learned Sunday nights and Wednesday nights and in the mornings. Learning their memory verses, and Kirsten, you need to sit down.
I already know the pledge to the Christian flag.
Can
You
you
do, don't you?
Can you do your memory verse?
Can you do it?
Yes.
Okay.
Nothing is impossible with God. We're going song 9.
Good job. Good job.
You want me to do my pledge?
Sure.
I pledge allegiance to the Christian flag and to the Savior for whose kingdom it stands. One Savior, crucified, risen, and coming again with life and liberty for all who believe.
Good job. So they've learned a lot.
Mommy,
Are you able to get that?
I have some people working on this here, okay?
Okay.
Nothing is impossible.
What, what's been the greatest joy here?
For me, finding a church family. We were very involved in our church before we moved here to Columbia City, and that's what was the hardest thing for me, was the friendships and the fellowship that I had with the people at our church. And I've found that here too, that the closest people to me are people from church. If I have a problem, that's who I call. If I just need to chat, I call friends from church. So that's been my greatest joy, is the friendships.
Are you picking that up?
Yep.
Short of the girls walking through the,
Yeah, I was gonna say the goose one through the camera a couple times, but
No, did you pick up the cooler?
no, I don't believe that's picking up at all.
Kirsten, I need you to come sit here and stay on the couch.
You say you're not picking that up?
Don't worry about Tori. I need you up here
I
now.
don't think it is.
Okay, all right. I don't know if it would or not. That's the chiller coming on.
I could hear it.
Yeah, that's again too.
Okay. Oh, you need to smile so people can see your pretty smile.
How could, how could the church here better minister to you?
Go ahead, honey. I answered the last one.
No, you,
Can I say my
I don't know. I haven't thought about that. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. That's all right. Not a good interview question.
I don't know.
well, the church here is already going in a lot of the right direction. You know, bringing in more praise team groups has been something that we think has brought, you know, a little more to the worship experience. That's been part of it. We've really enjoyed the music part of coming here, and the time period that we at the beginning where it's just simply singing and praising the Lord. And you have to understand, we came from a more liturgical background at some of our previous churches where it was everyone read the scripture together in a drone on motion, and this is so much nicer.
Yes.
Than Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. It's a whole lot nicer to sing it. Let's put it that way.
Have you enjoyed being in the drama? I mean, I know
Yes.
you're drumming all the time, so.
Yes.
Anything special? I mean, I know you've been certainly in a lot of secular type of drama. Anything special being in the drama that you were in, a couple years ago, that you're going to be in again here soon?
Yeah. It's always nicer working in a church atmosphere. You don't, in terms of doing a show, there's a message behind it that you can get more into than some of the secular dramas you do out there. Plus, just working with people in this atmosphere is a whole lot nicer and a whole lot more pleasant than sometimes working in stage venues elsewhere. In other words, you don't have all of the sniping and the little negative things happening in the... We're all here to have a good time and create a good show and send a message.
Sure.
We need a picture of this.
Is it good? As long as you girls don't think I'm Santa Claus, we're all
It's just a grandpa lap.
It's a grandpa laugh.
That's
Yeah,
right.
I'm getting ready for Elena. You girls are training.
That's
me, so
right.
That's it. That's the thing.
They know a grandpa.
Are you guys in Sunday school class?
Oh, yes.
Yes,
Okay. Tell me about your Sunday school class.
it's getting bigger all the time.
Oh, yes.
We've got an ever-increasing group. In fact, we had to move into a different room to accommodate the growing group. And it's great both for fellowship and for lesson.
We have prayer time, praise and concerns, before we start our class, and that's wonderful. It's a good way to know what's going on with everyone in the class, and you really feel connected that way by having that prayer time before we start into the lesson. And we have a prayer chain just through our Sunday school class, so that prayer concerns come through usually weekly. Some concern that we pray for everyone in the class. So it's a really...
And one of the things in terms of the kids programming too, and one of the things we are so impressed with is the fact that at a very early age, it's not just, a babysitting situation in the room. They take all the little tots like this, put them in the little chairs and have a lesson, read the scripture, sing a song, draw on biblical pictures, and actually teach a Sunday school class with the little bits.
That's exciting.
It's fun.
It is fun, isn't it?
But when I first saw, 1.5-year-olds and 2-year-olds in the little seats at the tables doing that, it was impressive.
Kayla, what's your favorite thing about church?
My favorite part is that sometimes we get to have playtime with the gym.
Is that your favorite thing?
Why don't you clip your mic on?
Okay. Okay. There you go. That's okay, just
Yeah, what is your favorite thing?
It's playing in the gym. Sometimes we get to play in the gym.
Do you like Sunday school? What do you do in Sunday school?
We tell a story about Jesus, and sometimes we get a color.
And where did you learn the Pledge Allegiance to the Christian flag?
Well, there's this night thing that we go to church at, and we have to learn the pledge to the Bible and the pledge to the Christian flag, and a memory verse and a song. We have a little thing that we get to learn that on.
Could you do that again, the pledge to the Christian flag? Can you do it again?
I pledge allegiance to the Christian flag and to the Savior for whose kingdom it stands, one Savior crucified, risen, and coming again with life and liberty for all who believe.
Well, that is wonderful.
that's great.
That is wonderful. My goodness. That is correct. Now, did she get that? At which program?
Sunlight Kids Club.
Oh,
on
the-
Sunday nights.
The one they're doing on Sunday night.
Yes. You were going to talk about the club on Sunday night? You like to go too, don't you?
Yep, come on over.
Yeah, why don't you go over and we'll put a mic on you. You can tell us about. Do you want to do that?
You can talk to her? Okay. Come up here. There we go.
Switch the mic over.
That's okay. I got it. There you go. There.
Yeah. What do you do on Sunday night?
Sometimes after a nice prep, I go in the band and play with Anna and Batman.
Sometimes you go play with Anna and Jasmine.
In the band
yeah.
at Sunlight Prep.
Sunlight Club.
Oops.
Where did you learn your memory verse?
At Sunlight Prep.
Or was that for Sunday school?
From Sunlight Prep.
Oh, okay.
Nothing is impossible with God.
Good job.
Woo.
You okay? You can't get over with the microphone on. Okay. You want to go back to see what Pastor George's thought?
Have you guys? You're on the visitation team.
Yes.
Have you got to make any yet?
Not yet.
All right. Well, I just thought you might have a.
Junior Miss running this week was kind of, yeah.
That's on the agenda for this week.
I know it's on mine too.
Yes. We also attend a small group. They started a new praise and worship small group. And since we're on the praise and worship team, we're meeting with that group, and that's been exciting too.
What are you doing in it?
We are learning more about praise and biblically based, what kinds of things have been expected, how to praise the Lord, and we've only had one group so far, or one meeting, but it was a really good time of fellowship too, and we're trying to learn a new praise song each time when we go.
Mike, why don't you read mine here?
Well, it's Mama's turn to talk. You had it on. maybe before we go, you can have another turn if you sit here nicely, okay?
Micah, if you were, if you had a friend and they were looking for a church, what would you tell them about First Church? Or why
There's-
maybe they should come and be a part?
There's a lot to tell about First Church. There's a lot of life here, a lot of exuberance, a lot of microphone problem.
So sorry.
There's a lot of little busy hands.
Welcome to my life.
Okay. There's a lot of life here. There's a lot of exuberance. Very lively worship services. A lot in the way of children's programming. There are always activities going on here. You know, everything from open gym for volleyball or basketball to the kids programs on Wednesday night or Sunday night.
Kirsten, move. You know,
We're in front of the camera.
why don't you take Tori and go over to that other couch, see if you can get her to walk all the way over there, okay? I was actually going to leave them with a sitter, and Donna said, bring them. Not sure that was a good move.
Well, okay.
Okay, go clear over to that couch way over there. Thank you. Okay. Should we stay for a little bit?
Okay.
Can you see?
One of the
Try that
things,
again.
okay, one of the things that I love about services here is how biblically based the sermons are. I mean, every Sunday, you always read from the Bible, and every sermon is biblically based, and I really appreciate that. And you can go again now that the girls are gone.
Let's try that one again.
Yes.
If you had a neighbor and they were looking for a church, what would you say to them?
I'd say we have a really nice church right at the edge of town that's very vibrant, full of life, exuberant, a lot of activities, a tremendous amount of children's programming there. Activities going on all the time, really. Everything from open gym volleyball and basketball to worship services on Sunday nights and children's programming things on Wednesday nights, and a lot of different things to get people in and involved and very spiritual.
What difference has First Church made in your spiritual life?
It's helped me to grow in my prayer life a lot more. That's always been an area I feel like I've been lacking, and there's such an emphasis on prayer at First Church that's really, really enhanced my prayer life since we've been here.
I'm a lot more fired up spiritually than I had been, and getting interested and excited about some of the biblical scriptures and lifestyles. It's been very helpful here.
What would you like to say that I forgot that I haven't asked you?
You covered a lot.
Is this going to be on the Rosie O'Donnell show?
And that'll probably be the one part of this interview that's on the tape.
I did this with, do you remember Sue Miller?
No.
Okay. Sue is, of course, I did an interview with her, and of course she's paraplegic at that point, but it was she was great to interview, but what was so funny at the end, she says, "Are we done? Now turn that thing off." And when she, of course, I left that in.
Great.
Well, I think that's plenty.
Okay,
Think you'll be able to salvage anything with the running back and forth and up and down? I'm so sorry.
It's all right.
Yep.
I don't know exactly the year, but I would say probably 42 years, 43 years. I was 5 or 6, I think, when we started coming here.
You were part of the group that went from Washington Street over to
To Main Street, yes.
Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, I was 9 years old, so I don't remember a lot, but it was. I remember the old church being small and kind of dark and crowded, and we go to the new church and it's big and new and fresh, and it was just something different. It was, for a 9-year-old, it was okay. Something that was just different. I didn't have a lot of planning in that one, so.
How did it feel to move from Maine to here?
We weren't, unfortunately, we weren't here the day we moved, so we didn't get in on the big parade. So we didn't get the big thrill that everybody else got. But at first I didn't buy into it, and boy, after we got here, as things start going up, it's really nice, and obviously we needed it. Had been Treasure was scared to death we weren't going to be able to pay for this place. So, but it's come along great. It's what we needed, and of course there's lots of things here that we can do that we couldn't do over there, and not just in the sanctuary or we got the gymnasium, the kitchen, and all the things that go along with everything. The daycare, and just so much more that we can do, and that's what we're here for.
You have a ministry. You want to tell me a little bit about that?
It's funny how things get started. I was asked once to grill lamb for feast after the fast. Yeah, feast after the fast. Get that right. And somebody had eaten lamb that I grilled once before, and I told them to get me the ingredients, and they got me something I'd never used before, and it turned out great. And most everybody liked the lamb, and then it kind of snowballed. They asked me to do a chicken dinner for 300 ladies, and I went, "What are you talking about? I don't do those kind of things. I grilled lamb, and that's it." And it was interesting going from grilling to try to cook some things in an oven that was entirely too small a kitchen to do those kind of things in. And unfortunately, I guess it doesn't really matter, when we built the new church, I wasn't much involved with planning of the kitchen, but it's turned out to be a great thing, and somehow I've been dubbed as the cook for all the meals from now on. So, and my family helps out, and we've gotten lots of people who just are interested in cooking and doing those kind of things that maybe have some talent, maybe have more talent than I do, but I got there first, I guess, and so I'm taking advantage of the fact of being kind of the head of that and enjoying it. And so far as I can tell, all the meals we've fixed have been a success. So, and to go from doing a little cooking back at home and here and there to preparing meals for 500 is quite a change. And we got a good enough kitchen now that we can do that, and it's neat. I enjoy it.
Darlene, you've been involved in the ministry too. What does it mean to you?
Well, it gives Doug and I a chance to work side by side. Cooperation. Gives, we do a lot of planning, and he kind of takes care of one part, like the hot food. I take care of desserts and drinks and rounding up some of the help, and it's really been fun. We've had a good time doing it, and our kids are involved now. Nate and Josh wash dishes and do a good job. Tricia does whatever we ask her to. Kind of become a family thing, and like we said, we have a lot of friends that come in and help, and a lot of people volunteer. We don't have to go out and ask. They they actually ask us if we can use help, which is really appreciated.
How does First Church minister to you there?
Oh boy. I've been coming to First Church since maybe 29 years now, and I don't know what I would do if I wouldn't have my church family. They're always there. Cut. They're always there. You know, there's friends everywhere. You can always ask for help. I don't know, if I wouldn't have my First Church friends, I don't know what I'd have. You can cut.
I think about a totally different direction here and feeling better, just about some things that Nate's been involved in and seeing him transition and everything from, anything that connects with you, whether it's with your dad or something.
I just like being able to do stuff with the family in the church. It's a family inside of a family, where it's neat to be able to finally, do stuff with your parents. With the way we are right now, we're all over the place with, we're doing different activities. Families really never together a whole lot. To sit down for a meal, and here's a chance where we actually get to fix a meal, and then we get to sit down and eat together. It's pretty neat.
Are you in a Sunday school class?
Mm-hmm.
How's it going?
The Sunday school class is going pretty good. From where we were a year ago, where we had maybe 2 people in that class, to now we've grown. We've got about 10 people or so in the class. I like the fact that we actually have some young adults that are getting involved in the church. Whereas before Donna was here, we were lucky to have maybe 5 on a good Sunday.
Okay. What about youth group?
Youth group, gosh. 5 years ago, there was no youth group. Or I don't know how many years we've been here, Donna. It's been 4 years. Before Donna got here, there was no youth involvement in the church. Then all of a sudden she comes along, and now we got 30, 40 youth every Sunday. And it was neat to be part of that first group where we start seeing things come together. The first night we had youth group, we had maybe 10 people show up, and we went out and we just went looking for more people to come in and just get the word out about it. And then to see it just start to snowball and get a lot more people coming, and just seeing the impact on youth's lives is neat.
Great. Doug, you have a unique experience in this church, I think. I'm not sure, but I think you may have been the only teen that went to Haiti, and now as an adult you've gone back, and you're going to go back again. What does all that mean to you? I mean, what kind of impact does it have on your life?
It's kind of funny because when we went the first time, I was scheduled to go, and we got canceled that year. And when they come around the next time, I was playing basketball, and that was way too important to take time out of basketball to go to Haiti. And the night before we left, one of the guys that was on the basketball team was planning to go, and he hurt his arm and shoulder and could not go, and they had an open ticket, and they said, "Doug, you're the only person that's got the shots and they're ready to go." And I said, "I ain't going." I was not going to do that. They talked me into it. They prayed with me and got me through this little thing. And so I had 24 hours to prepare to go to Haiti. And that wasn't quite enough, I don't think. It was kind of a culture shock the first night. It was just a shock. But when I left there, I said, and I told Darlene, I didn't know her at the time, but when we got started dating, I said, I went to Haiti once. I want to go back sometime. We took the trip to the Dominican Republic 4 or 5 years ago, and I said, well, it's the same island. I guess I made my trip back. And then just spur of the moment, we sat in Sunday school, and it was offered that we had this another trip coming up. And Darlene's, "Hey, you got vacation time. Why don't you go?" And I thought, yeah, I do. And it was wonderful. I mean, I cannot explain what that trip does for you. It's an opportunity to serve people who can't help themselves. They don't have the money, they don't have the wherewithal to do what they need done in some areas. And Darlene said, well, there's things around here that you guys can do. And I said, yeah, but anybody can do that. People who go to Haiti go there and can do things for people who can't do what we can do for them. And, and we got down there and saw that our sister church was in a position that did not have they had a building that was way too small for them. They've been trying for 10 years to build a new one. And they've got the building up, but they don't have a roof on it, so they still can't do the project. And on the way back from all we did was visit. We saw the school, we saw the kids. And on the way back, I said, this isn't right.
Cut.
And that's about how I felt of the boss too. I said, we just put up a $4 million building and they can't put a roof on their church. So I said, Steve, what's it going to cost to put that roof on that church for those people? He said, I don't know, but if you want to know, I'll figure it out before we leave. I said, you give me a price and we'll be back. I don't know how we'll get the money for sure, but we'll be back and put that roof on next year. And every one of the guys was down there, along with 2 of our sons and a couple other guys are going back. We're going to put that roof on the church.
Better cut.
Let's give Josh and Trish.
Dad gets them all choked up now.
You can tell how it was without Donna. No, they don't want to hear it. They don't want to hear it. Just a minute. Oh. I'm sure they won't. Right, family.
Well, you didn't want him to, so it works.
Okay, so when did you guys get married?
May 19th.
May 19th.
2001?
Yes. Yeah.
No, you need to say 2001. Yes, they will understand, yes.
Oh, man, when did you get married?
Let me try this again. When have you been married?
May 19th, 2001.
Take 3?
Oh, geez. Hey, Josh, when you're a little different than the rest of these guys, because, well, Darlene's been here long enough that certainly this is, you kind of came in, I mean, had you had any church background before you started here?
A little bit. We used to go a lot before, my dad passed away when I was 7. So it was, after that, it was I kind of felt like, what was the use really? And it was hard for me being so young and losing a parent. And it just didn't seem like that was fair and that was right. And I really didn't know how to handle it at that young age. And I'd go with my grandparents every once in a while. So when I met Trisha, she was, asking me to go all the time. And I was, I really didn't want to. And then on Friends Day, she asked me if I'd go when I was at the high school. And I ended up going and been going ever since then.
Tell me, how did your relationship with Jesus change?
It changed a lot. I mean, I remember you talking about grace and everything, and I thought,
I've done so much that it's not for me, you know. I can't be forgiven for what I've done and what I've done to other people. And it really dawned on me that, you know, there is still a chance for me, and that, you know, there is a reason for me being here.
So, how's your relationship together? How's it changed? That trip?
I think he's probably even a stronger Christian now than I am. And just probably because I've grown up in the church my whole life, and I've seen like just a bigger impact on him within the last few years, that it's just more noticeable to me than, you know, growing up with it my whole life. But it's really good for our relationship.
What does it mean to you to get married here?
It means a lot to me. It's what I've always wanted, and I didn't think it would ever happen that I would, you know, meet somebody who'd want to get married in a church or even start going to a church with me. You know, either if I met somebody, they wouldn't go to church here, and then we'd have to feud on which church we would get married at or something, and it's just somebody who's come along with me and can do what I wanted to do then.
What about the Sunday school class that the two of you were involved in? How's that been helpful in your relationship?
I think it's helped both of us to realize, you know, that we are just starting out, and being a pre-marriage class, it's nice to see other people who, you know, are going through and have been through some of the same things we are. And it's nice to make new friends like that, and to be able to, you know, to discuss with Jim and Carolyn and everybody, you know, things that may be on our minds and what we're looking forward to and what, you know, we want out of our relationship and how to reach that.
Okay. Are you going to Haiti?
No.
You're going to go? Yeah. This time? Okay.
He doesn't have a microphone.
No.
He hasn't. I was thinking of the idea that you've been on a couple of mission trips, and now it's Haiti, and if you can have any comment on how that led to.
Yeah.
I'll be glad to give mine
You
up.
can comment on. Tricia's always wanted to go on a mission trip, has never got to.
Oh, is that right?
Donna
Wow.
wasn't here when she was.
Yeah, now we need, on the other end, these guys would be great.
And I really think they've probably got a close proximity next year of maybe where the youth director can find them pretty easily.
I'm looking forward to the junior high program across the street.
Is that right?
Yeah,
You guys live right out there?
Yeah.
Right across the street.
Okay, that's good. Yeah, that's a good way to go here of, you made a couple of trips, right?
Right. I went to West Virginia and Mexico, both with the senior high group. And they're a lot of fun. You really grow closer together with your Christian friends here at the church, and you make a lot of new friends that you didn't go to school with or were a couple years behind you. And then you get into the ministry. You get involved with it a little bit, and you start to build in your Christian life in a new way that you can't do in the church. What I look forward to in Haiti is that transition from going from the senior high, the youth group to, okay, now this is the adult group. You know, no longer, you're not a kid anymore. You're an adult, and you're going to people older than you instead of being the oldest one, and you get to learn things because these are people who have done this before. They're experienced Christians, they're strong Christians, and I think it's gonna be a life-changing experience for me.
What is the catering ministry? What has it done for you, personally?
The catering ministry.
What is it? I don't know what else to call it. What would you call it? Catering ministry?
I don't know, sometimes it's funny how the Lord leads your life, I think. Right now I'm self-employed, so I can kind of set my own hours and, kind of come and go. And if it wouldn't be for that, I wouldn't be able to help Doug as much. We've had a couple events that are during the day, so, I can take off and I can work with him. And I've really enjoyed it. I'm an organizer. Doug's a doer. So he's kind of had to learn, he's had to kind of take me along with him. But it's been good. I enjoy it. It's something maybe 4 or 5 years ago we would have never dreamed of cooking for even 50 people, let alone trying to cook for 500 people. But like I said before, if we wouldn't have all the great help we do, it couldn't be done. So.
Hey, you guys are doing great.
Jeez.
But if everybody wants to practice, it's like if you have an event, it's
I think, hey, is there something that you wanted to share that? No, I didn't.
You want to start over and do yours again?
I don't try it again, I'm gonna work it out. Won't be better the next time.
No, you guys did great. You just did great. And
We're probably not on tape now, but I'll say it anyway. One thing that I think has really helped with being in the churches through our whole married life is raising our kids up in the church. I don't know how people do it if they don't have a church family. And Christian teachers and Christian Sunday school teachers and I can't take credit for raising our kids, but if it was in our church, if we didn't have our church, I'm not for sure which path Tricia and Nate would have gone down. So I'm really thankful to have a church like the First Church of God that help raise our kids.
good stuff.
That's probably the best of the whole one. You started talking, you just got stuck in a position.
No, it's true. That's okay if it wasn't. Anyway, I spoke my piece there. Now my whole family knows that.
Give your hands there. You got it? Okay. Wow. Get all relaxed here. Hey, how long have you guys been coming to First Church?
About 4 years?
Yeah, 4 or 5, something like that.
What was your very first impression?
The first time we came? The first time we came, actually, to be honest, I was scared to death. I actually was afraid to go to church. Logan was in preschool here, and we had brought him, and he had attended a couple of weeks before we came to church. And we decided we would come and see what it was like. And we came in, and the church was packed. I mean, it was full of people, and we were just like, ooh, wow. So it was kind of scary, actually. My first impression was scary. I can't speak for Chad, but my first one was scary.
Were the people kind or friendly?
Yeah, they were friendly. They were. And it was nice to see a person here or there that you recognized from preschool. So that was really great. So they kind of went over and, oh, we're glad to see you here. So it made you feel welcome. You were very grateful for that. Yeah.
How about you, Chad?
Oh, I had been in church when I was a young kid, so I was familiar with it, but mainly it was Lori's family, Lori's cousin, the Garrises, who we had sat next to and kind of clung on to for the first few weeks. But no, I felt very welcome, and to me, I felt right at home right away.
Mm-hmm.
What had been your church background, Lori?
Mine, I had none. We went to an occasional wedding in a church. That was probably the closest to going to church I ever had. We didn't go on Sunday mornings, and I always looked at people that did go on Sunday mornings to maybe be a different kind of person than what I was, not understanding, what they were doing or what they were. I mean, I didn't understand that. I didn't understand God. I didn't understand why they went on Sundays. I mean, I was always curious when we went for weddings, what went on. But the attitude growing up was always fairly negative, not extremely, but fairly. When we went to a wedding, it was you go in, you hurry up and leave. You don't stay for the reception. You don't stay in the church any longer than you have to. So I really had none growing up.
What would the word saved have meant to you at that point?
I don't know. I don't think I would have understood it. I just don't think I would have understood what saved was. I don't think I would have had a clue at all.
And so then after you attended, what was the desire in your heart?
Actually, George, I believe that God worked on me before we ever came. I really believe that because he put that desire to go in the first place. I mean, I never went to a church when I was growing up. We put Logan in preschool at First Church. And that's when we started thinking there's a better way of life for us and for our children and for raising them. And I believe that even then, when I didn't know him, he was working. I just truly believe that. So I think he worked then to bring us in, to even bring us here. He worked on us then. And once we were here, then he just worked on my heart. Just worked on it.
So would you like to tell what kind of happened that night? You invited me over?
Well, it was funny. The first 2 times we attended, after the second time we got a call from First Call Ministries, and they asked us, would you like the pastor to come out? And we said, oh, no, that's not necessary, We don't need to see the pastor. We just need to, we're glad we're coming, but that's enough. And so the following week that we went, you had a sermon, and I can't remember what it was on, but I cried. And it just really touched my heart. And so the next week, the same thing happened, and I cried again. And then I was really upset because I was crying, because I didn't want anybody to know I was crying. I didn't want anybody to see me in church crying. And so we called you at that point. I said, Chad, I think we need to call the pastor. I think he needs to come. And so we called you, and you came out. And at first, I wasn't sure what I wanted to talk to you about, so I asked you a bunch of questions about the church. And finally, you just directed me in the right direction, and we sat down and talked about it, and I had told you of some things that were bothering me and hurting me, and things that I didn't know. If I asked God in my heart, what do I do with those things? What do I do? What about that hurt that I had? You told me then just to give it to him. And I did. And he took it all. He took every bit of it. I felt so cleansed after you were there and after I prayed. It was just overwhelming. I think the feelings that I had were... It was a release. I just felt so like a huge weight was lifted from me. I just felt as if it was gone. It was, to physically describe it is almost impossible. You can't. I'm sorry.
Chad, what about you for that night? What went through your mind?
Well, the first time I had accepted God was December 28th, 1980. I went to a little tiny church that had about 50 people, and little old pastor, probably about 65, 70 years old. And that was the first time I accepted Jesus. And then I hit the teenage rebellious years and kind of grew away from God, grew away from the church. And but in my heart, and see, all that time, I knew something was just not right, but I continued to ignore God. And it was just really interesting. Lori had mentioned, she was not churched. Years ago, God had planned that night to happen. And that night, it was just like Lori described it. It was just very touching, and that was the night that I rededicated my life to the Lord. And the timing was perfect, just for Thanksgiving. I mean, what better way to give thanks than having God come back into my life and come into my wife's life. He's just amazing.
So the anniversary of that time's going to be just about our campaign, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yep.
What does First Church mean to you today?
Oh, wow. First Church has done a lot. God's done a lot. God's worked in our lives and allowed First Church to introduce Him to us. And I feel now that He works through First Church to help us grow and to help me know Him. It's helped me learn about Him, learn to know exactly what it's like to have a Savior and exactly what that means. And to grow in Him is, you can't do it by yourself. You have to have help. And First Church has done so much for that. They've really done good.
Chad, you're involved in a prayer ministry. Could you describe maybe what that means to you or your involvement in that ministry?
That was one of the big turning points for me. I'm not one to pray out loud, or I wasn't. In fact, that was probably about the first time I really prayed out loud in ages. And I felt God had been calling me to be on the pastor's prayer team. And the first Sunday I went in there, in fact, I believe Rusty Parrish was the leader at that time for that Sunday. And we all went in your office and we were kneeling and praying for you. And I could just hear everybody praying one by one. And I was like, uh-oh, that means I really got to start praying here pretty soon. And I was like, what do I say? What do I do? And instead of trying to think of what to say, I just, again, just opened up my heart and says, okay, God, what do you want me to say? And from that point on, I don't have any problems. It kind of opened up the floodgates. I play usually I'm the one that people ask to pray for at family dinners, whether it be Lori's side or my side, and it just never happened before. In a lot of ways, I'm kind of a quiet person by nature, but in a lot of ways, I'm also a very talkative person. And it just is amazing. And when whatever is on your heart, it's not what I want to say, it's what God wants me to say.
You did a funeral recently. You want to tell us about that?
Yeah, when you asked Lori when what First Church meant to her, I really never knew until this past spring when my father passed away. When he first passed away, we had called our Sunday school for the prayer team. And first it was just my father was in critical condition. And within 10 minutes after we got the first phone call, we got the second phone call that he had passed away. And within 10 minutes, there were members of our Sunday school class at my house praying with me. And not only praying for me, but for my family up in Michigan who they had never met. And we had went up and planned all the arrangements, came back and picked up our children, and our answering machine was just full of messages from church members, letting us know they were praying for us, if there was anything they could do. Mailboxes just jam-packed with cards of concern. And my stepmother had asked me to do the eulogy for my father, which again, the salesman that I am, I thought I shouldn't have much of a problem. But in all honesty, when I sat down to write the eulogy, I did not do it till after the viewing, and the funeral was the next morning. And after the viewing is when I just sat down at the computer. Everybody had gone to bed, and God just spoke to me and what He wanted me to say at that eulogy. The next day, before the funeral was to start, or the eulogy, I was pacing in the back of the room, and you had come in all the way up to Michigan, and you came back and at that time said, let's do a prayer. You didn't ask me. You just said, let's do a prayer. And when we started doing that prayer, I could feel a tingly motion come through my body. And I just knew it was the Holy Spirit coming. And I went in there and did that eulogy and did not shed one tear. And that was not my concern. My concern was getting through it and getting the message across that I wanted to get. My dad was not a strong Christian, but he knew who God was. And over the last year, I believe he had asked God to come back into his life. And the message I wanted to get across is those who don't know God to get to know Him before his or her time is up. And it was a very strong message that I felt I gave. And at that point, it was God. When I got done, I had an emotional letdown. And amazingly enough, this is one thing that you don't know, 2 weeks later, our neighbor, her brother passed away. She had asked me to do his eulogy. And the amazing part is, just the week before, you had done a story on the mustard seed. And during that gentleman's eulogy, I didn't know who he was, never knew who he was. But when I opened my Bible that night, the night before doing the eulogy, I come right to the mustard seed. And it's just amazing. Again, that God had spoke to me. God woke me up. I felt that I was not a dying Christian, but I was stagnant. And through my father's death, He's revived me again. Made me realize the importance of the church, more importantly, the importance of God, and how important and who your true friends really are, and that's members of the church.
Laura, you mentioned nursery school a couple of times. Does it have a special place in your heart as far as the ministry? And I know you work here too. But
in a lot of ways. The first way it has a special place in my heart is I feel that if it weren't for the preschool, that maybe I would not have been drawn. Maybe I would have anyway. But, I can't really say that God would have given up on me at that point. But I know that that's part of the reason it has a special place, because that's how we came here. We came here because we had our children enrolled in the nursery school. And so I know that alone has a special place. Another reason that it does is because I grew up not knowing God. I grew up not having any knowledge of Him at all. And I feel it's so important for the children to be touched in any way that they possibly can be. And the best way to do it is, from when they're little on up. And so it's important to me for a lot of ways, that it touches the children, that they learn about Christ, that they learn about His love. And just any old nursery school doesn't do it. If it's not a Christ-centered place, then He's not going to touch them. And so it's important to me for a lot of ways. That's a very important ministry here at church.
Now, I know you guys have only been in AIM for 2 weeks, but we need a little commercial. So, what do you think of AIM?
Well, actually, the other night at Bible study, I go to a Bible study on Thursday evenings, and I told everybody there that I could be your walking commercial for AIM class, because I have everybody that I ran into, I said, you've got to take this AIM class. It is totally awesome. You just have to take AIM. It's wonderful. And it is, because I feel, especially I feel, that I wasted time in not taking it. I feel when I first became a Christian, and I did take some discipleship things, and it did set me off in the right direction. But the AIM class, what I've noticed so far, is that it has not only set me off in the right direction, but it's put my heart in the right place. It's helped me to understand God. It's helping me to know Him more than what I knew Him before. And I just feel all around closer to Him. I feel very convicted about the time. I thought I was doing good as a Christian because I spent every morning reading my Bible and talking and praying, and I thought, hey, you're doing great. And then when I really got into AIM, even within the first week, all the time that I spent with Him, talking to Him, reading about Him, learning about Him, I felt so convicted that how could I possibly think that I was a good Christian? How could I possibly think? I was asking Him to come to me. I wasn't going to Him. I was putting Him on my convenience role, you know? It was like when it was convenient for me, I sit down and I talk to Him, and that shouldn't be that way. He needs to be the most important priority in your whole entire life, and AIM class has really opened my eyes to that. And I really think that if you don't take it, you're never going to learn that. You're never going to know that. And that's the most important thing you need to learn and need to know. And so George, I could pull everybody aside in the church and tell them to take it. Then we go, watch out, here comes Lori Richter, go away. Go down this other instead. But they're really missing it if they're not taking it. They truly are. They're missing a whole big picture that they don't see. I know I didn't see at first, so.
I just thought about, I think this was your last, you were in junior church and stuff, and just recently you had new curriculum and one Sunday morning about, was it your class that a child accepted Christ?
Yes.
Can you just share a little bit about that?
Oh, it was fun. In my Sunday school class, I had a little girl who's 5. We have a new curriculum we're doing, and part of it entails storytelling, which I have enjoyed thoroughly. I've had a blast dressing up in costume and coming into the room pretending to be someone else, and it's been wonderful. And last week or the week before, I went into the room and pretended to be a slave, and I talked about the healings that Jesus did to some of my friends. And I had a little girl in my class who was just awestruck by the story. And she said, and she watched, and you could tell that she was just not missing a thing. She wasn't missing a beat when I was talking to her. She was just so into the story. And I told her about the gentleness of Jesus and how much He loved us and how He healed my friend. And by the time this story was over, this little girl was just totally captivated. So when we moved on to another project, I gave it open to the children. One of the kids had mentioned something about going to heaven, and so I asked them if they understood about going to heaven and how to get there. And of course, they sparked a discussion, and I reminded them that I was always there to pray with anybody who didn't think they had Jesus in their heart, and anybody who wasn't sure what that meant. I was always open to pray with them, and the rest of the children were doing something. If they felt the need to come to me, that they could. And this little girl came to me, and she said, Mrs. Richter, I'm just not sure, but I think I need to talk to Jesus. And I wept. I was just ecstatic. And so we sat down and I talked to her, and I asked her some questions. And by the time we were finished, I know she understood. I know she understood what it meant. And so she asked Christ into her heart herself. And it was wonderful. It was absolutely wonderful. It was thrilling.
Okay. Do you have anything that you want to just say that we didn't ask maybe?
One thing, next month is 2 years that one of Lori's uncles passed away. After his funeral, Lori and our daughter had went to the store, and my son and I were outside. He was swinging and I was pushing him, and he asked me, about death. Why, did Uncle Don die? Where is he? What's going on? He was just very confused. And the best way I could, I tried to explain what had happened. And he started asking questions about Jesus. And that day was one of the happiest days of my life. My son asked Jesus into his heart. And I was just glad to be a part of that. My wife knew something was up when she got home, and I was swinging on the swings with him.
And a doll on the swing set, I wondered what was going on.
But that was one of the happiest moments of my life. And, again, it happened in November, time of Thanksgiving, and November seems to be good to us.
But had we not come to church in the first place, that would have never happened. If we wouldn't have answered God's calling to us, that would have never happened.
That's the amazing part. Here's another plug for George's AIM class. and reading that Experiencing God, one thing I never realized is when I pray to God, I thought I was praying to God for things that I wanted. And in that book, it pointed out that, God leads you to those prayers. It's not the other way around. And, every person that sits in the pew every Sunday, God's working on them in one way or the other. And just like Abraham, sometimes it may take a day. In Abraham's case, it was 25 years. We just have to be patient and take whatever God gives us, whether our assignment is small or large.
Great.
Forgot about these things.
That look okay to you guys?
It's nice. Are you, I assume that you're zooming in and out?
Yeah, just depending on,
Yeah, right, sure.
what they're talking about.
On the situation that you take, so, you're taking some real tight stuff.
Some, because you don't need.
I want
with
some tight
interviews.
stuff, yeah.
You mean like blemishes?
Yeah, that too, right up the middle.
You don't have any blams, don't get me wrong. Hey, Lucy, how long have you been coming to church?
60 years. Oh, are you on recording now?
Oh, no, it's fine.
Oh, okay.
Just talk. No, you just talk to me. Don't even worry about it.
Because that's why what I intended to say on the tape.
Oh, what was that? What did you intend to say?
I moved here in 1939, and at that time we heard of Reverend Schroyer's church here on North Washington Street. And he had been the pastor at the Mount Tabor Church of God, where we had come from. And that's where we're going tomorrow, to Rich Pride's ordination service, and I hear you're having the message. Anyway, we moved there when I was in the 8th grade, and when I was a freshman, we went to Reverend Schroyer's church then. And I have gone to the church here for 60 years. I became a member that year I was converted, and became a member, and joined the church, and baptized, I think, maybe the next year, and have been here ever since.
So you attended Mount Tabor before you came here?
No, but we lived near there.
Oh, okay.
We lived about 6-7 miles from there, but we went to a Hastings Evangelical United Brethren Church.
Okay.
And they're still going, but they're getting very weak now. It's a little white country church, something like Oak Grove used to be.
So you made the transition from Washington Street to Main Street.
Right. And at that time, we didn't think possibly we could help build that church, because we had just come through the Depression and the World War II, and my husband and I had just gotten married in 1946. And we had 4 children, and of course everybody was coming home from the service, and all of us were having 3 or 4 children, so it soon crowded the church out. And at that time, we didn't even have a basement. It was just one room and a balcony.
and the classes were up and down in the church, upstairs and downstairs. The girls were in different classes than the boys, and it was real fun because even the adult classes were, in male and female. So when we got up about that age, we decided everybody should be together. So we put the boys and girls together in our youth group. And what I like is the people we knew at that time, some of them are still going here to church, and we've had these fellowships all this time and raised our families together all these times, and had money projects to build that church on Main Street. We didn't have money, but my husband was, he and Jack Shinneman cut trees, and that was one of the projects we had. They cut down big trees, and then they were paid a certain amount for that. The whole class would chip in. Excuse me. And they raised onions, and we sold, what would be considered recycled now. Had rummage sales and all those kinds of things to bring in money, and that was a lot of work. I'm glad we don't have to do that now. But we really appreciate the fact, in those days in the church, we were concerned. I was a Sunday school teacher. I taught third grade class for about 30 years. And we were concerned because there were not enough young men involved in the church services and doing things. Because, especially for little boys, here they are, they have their mom at home all the time, they go to school, they have a woman school teacher, they come to church, and then they have a woman Sunday school teacher. So we were concerned that they were not having a male influence in their lives. And at that time, the men were pretty much involved in trying to make a living, and didn't see the need for it. The women we were doing a good job. It wasn't that we weren't doing a good job. It's just they needed the man's influence in their lives. And we're glad to say that now, through a lot of our efforts, the young men are really involved in this church. And they were starting to be over on Main Street also. But up until that time, they hadn't been. But I think Promise Keepers has done a lot for the men of the church, because they felt their need of leadership. And we women wanted them to lead, but they didn't want to lead, so we're happy for that.
Tell me about your mom.
George, can you switch down in places?
Oh, you got her turned too far. Yep. Okay, I'm sorry. I should have thought of that. It was a little tight.
Yeah, just
getting too much to the side of your face.
Oh, I see.
That's fine. We're fine
Okay,
now.
so I'm supposed to be looking at you?
No, no, you look at all three of us here. I'm pretty heavy to look at, so you can look at. Tell me about your mother.
My mother was Harriet Method, and if it wouldn't have been for her, we wouldn't have been in church. And that was another thing, I'm glad you mentioned that, George, because I wanted to encourage the mothers that are coming here and their husbands aren't coming, and they're thinking, maybe is this all worthwhile? And my mother took us to church. My dad never went to church until all three of us kids were married. And it was through the Gleaners class at that time. They were having a revival service at one of the churches, and Mom got Dad to go to it. And the Gleaners class had been praying for him, and he accepted the Lord, and ever since that time then he went to church. But Mom was one of these people that could do everything. Our church at that time was only 100 people, 150 people, and she would write plays, she would make the scenery, she would do the costuming, and then she would have the production of it. And so I think they're still using maybe some of her costumes in the big things we have right now. But she loved it. And we didn't have a car at that time, because my dad said since we moved to town, and it was right after the Depression, and we didn't have any money, that we didn't need a car, we could all walk. So we walked to church for a mile every week, and we were open every time the door was open. So that meant 2 or 3 times a week we were walking back and forth this mile to church. But I think it made us healthier, because we're still in pretty good health.
Tell me about Jean.
Jean was, we met in high school. Jean's my husband. We've been married 54 years, and we met in high school. He was in the FFA, which is a boys' country, well, not farmers, I guess you would say. And I was in the FHA, which was the Future Homemakers of America. And every year at this time of year, about in October, we'd have a hayride. And the two groups got together, and so Gene and I got together, and that's how we met. He served overseas in the Marine Corps for over 2 years. He was in the Marine Corps 3 years altogether. And he came to church here. His Aunt Lucille came to church here. And so that's why everybody calls me Lucy, so they didn't mix the two of us up. And he soon accepted Christ as his Savior before we were married. And then we were married. Reverend Schroyer married us also. And he's been a member almost as long as I have.
How's he doing right now?
He's very frustrated. He has dementia now, and he thinks of all the things he used to do in the church. He used to be a superintendent and an elder. We were both in the choir about 30 years, and he was a good leader. And it seemed he didn't like to lead, but it seemed that the Lord put him there. When we had two big major problems in the church, he was the board president, and he brought us through it, with the Lord's help, naturally. But
What's the church meant to you as far as even recently in Gene's illness?
well, I don't know what we would do without the Lord, because you can't do it on your own. You think you can. And I think the older you get, the more you realize you don't. We think we're leading our lives, directing our lives, but we're not. And the Lord has been good. If it wouldn't have been for him, we wouldn't have made it through all this. And especially raising children, I said I think maybe one of the hardest things in life was to raise children, bring them up in the fear and admonition of the Lord, thinking now they're going to do all the right things, and when they get on their own, they don't do all the things you want them to do. So Donna, take heart. Just do what you feel the Lord leads you to do, and don't worry about the outcome. It's his responsibility, not yours after that. We now have 10 grandchildren and 2 great-grandchildren, we have 4, and expecting 2 more, plus several step-grandchildren and so forth. But they all are, I can't say they're all Christians, but they've had the Christian experience, and we're especially happy for the ones out in California, because that's a wild country out there. And they were raised in the church, and they're all faithful. And they don't drink, and they don't do drugs, and any of those things. And we've been really close to them. You wouldn't think so, but they stayed with us a couple months every summer. Their dad was a teacher, and so they would spend their vacations with us and go to church here. So they knew our church as well as the other grandkids living near us. So we enjoyed that. I might say too, George, some of you people think that George just became acquainted with us when we were first here. He was in college with our daughter, as our oldest daughter, and when I told her he was our pastor now, she said, I can't believe it. She said, I can't imagine him being a pastor. Now, he wasn't a bad boy. He was just like he is here at church, kind of wild, and did the fun things and had these fast cars, didn't you, George? Anyway, she was real pleased that he was here.
What does Jesus mean to you?
I think I have never really been close to anybody in my life, and if it weren't for him, I wouldn't be able to make it, because I've sort of been, I guess you would say, kind of a loner, although I've done a lot of things with people, and I love people, but I don't want to confide in other people, basically. I don't know, I guess it's not a basic trust. Now I have a lot of friends, and this is one thing I wanted to say about the young people in the church. This is a big church, and it's hard to get acquainted with people. So what you need to do is get in these group settings, like your Sunday school class, Bible studies, these new classes that they're starting. We had cells in our home at the time we were raising our families. And I can't remember some of the other things, but you're never going to learn people just by coming in the door and expecting everybody to say, who are you and how are you and what do you need? You need to go up to somebody and say, I need you. And what can I do to help? And otherwise you're going to get lost in this big church. So that's the only thing I don't like about it, but I think we're covering it really well. and the teachers were having, I especially like the young men teaching the high school kids. And when Gene and I used to be greeters at the door, and I'd hear those people talking to other people about things they had discussed in school that came up, and then they'd go to teach their Sunday school class, and I said, praise you, Lord, for what you brought to this church. I did forget the tape ministry, though. After I quit teaching, I felt like I needed to do something, but I could tell I shouldn't be teaching third graders because I expected them to mind a little bit better than they seem to be minding right now at that time. So I said, Lord, what do you want me to do? And he said, you can do the tape ministry. I had been working probably, I'm saying 30 years all the time. I think probably 30 years I'd worked. And now I was home, but at that time then I started taking care of both of our mothers. And after they passed away, I started doing the tape ministry, which we taped the service every Sunday, and now we're videoing it also. And I would take these tapes around to the shut-ins, and anybody that wanted it. Now, some of the older people said it was just too confusing. You know, they couldn't handle that little tape player or the tape cassette. So I would just go and visit them, and I think basically they didn't really care that much about the sermon necessarily. They just wanted somebody to come and visit and tell you what was happening in the church. So if any of you need a job, just go around and visit all these people. They're lonely. And they will tell me, they would say, now such and such has not been in my home for I can't remember when, and they were talking about people in the church. And so I would always try to pass that word on to the person that was responsible. And usually someone went out then and talked to those people, but you don't realize how lonely they are, and they especially like kids. And so whenever you can, we'll take your children out.
I was going to ask her about the tape ministry, but she couldn't.
Yeah, me too. That's going to be the next question. You got that one first.
So now I'm retired, period. Since my husband has a problem with his memory, it's so frustrating to him because he had been a tool and die man for 33 years, and now he doesn't even know what a screwdriver is for. He can't even put a key in the door and wind the clock and things like that. And so that's why I resigned from the tape ministry. I couldn't leave him alone at the home because I went home one day after delivering tapes, and here he was, completely passed out, sitting in the chair at the table. And it all turned out okay, but I was just afraid to leave him. So he went with me then, and it took a lot longer to go on the ministry, but he understood, and so now my ministry is my husband.
That's right. And you know, the two of you have always been, you know, you guys have encouraged me for over 30 years, actually.
Really?
Absolutely, yeah. Well, you know, when I first started pastoring, because we had really met at Finley.
Right.
I mean,
That's right.
I remember, you know, your daughter introducing me to you guys, and I just always felt like I knew you, you know, I guess I did. And so but Gene, always tremendously encouraging, you know. You go out and say something positive, you know, those things were just, so you've had a ministry there as well.
Yes, and you don't realize you're doing a ministry, even if you're not doing a specific ministry, when you witness. I had a girl, I worked at Weatherhead in the office at times, and a girl came up to me and she said, I just love to hear you and Carol Snyder, another gal that went to church here, talk to each other, because she said that's how she became a Christian. And you don't think you're even making a dent in their lives, but you're witnessing wherever you are, whether it's good or bad. Yeah.
Well, I think you've done just a great job.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Now you can edit it.
Well, somebody will. Somebody will. I don't know that I will. Somebody will. Okay. Well, this won't be too long. We won't do this for long. So this will be pretty quick.
Go try your microphone real quick. Just talk.
Just
I mean,
talk
just
to
come-
her.
I don't need.
Just talk during.
Oh, hi, how are you today?
Try again.
Steve.
Go ahead, try again.
It's off to the side, you don't want her to move her sweater.
Can you hear me well enough?
I better put that on
Yeah, it probably
her,
would probably be better.
on her.
Will it be on a
over
blouse?
there, On her tie.
Yeah.
Okay, we're gonna move this onto your blouse.
I can take,
Right, I think if you put it
I
right
can
here.
take this off here.
Yeah, that's fine. Go ahead and say something.
Just talk to him again. Tell him your ABCs, you remember?
Well, do you want forwards or backwards?
We got it. Okay, anytime.
Okay. Viola, how long have you been coming here to church?
We moved here to Columbia City in the very latter part of November 1977. So I suppose that in November, it'll probably be about 23 years then, wouldn't it?
Tell me something, did the Fix-It team do anything special for you?
They didn't do anything special for me back then because we didn't have a Fix-It team.
No, not then, but a few years ago.
Oh yes, the Fix-It team done something extraordinarily special for me. It was sort of strange because my sons and they were more or less both planning that I needed a new roof, and neither knew the other had it in mind. And eventually then, they kind of come together, and it was a big project because they tore everything off of the roof and started from the bottom up. So it was a very big project.
And so they completed the roof on your house?
They did, and there were a lot more of the church Fix-It men than there were my sons. I hope at least I didn't have that many sons.
You didn't fix dinner for them that day, did you?
Yes, I fixed dinner for them a couple days because I was working 2 or 3 days there. One day, the day that my sons helped especially, they had an outdoor picnic. They'd come in and get their food, and they had tables set up outside then to go out and eat.
Do you belong to Sunday school class here? Are you a part of a Sunday school class?
Yes, the builders class. Now, I was a part of another Sunday school class for a long, long time, the class that Bob Smith taught, the Gleaners class. But finally, they either went to the convalescent home or passed away, so we only had a very few less, I guess, than what you got fingers on a hand left anymore, so we just kind of relieved Bob of his responsibility and went to other classes. We went to other
What does
classes.
First Church mean to you?
Well, I never had gone to a church this large before. When I was in college, I went to the college First Church there at Indiana. Well, I guess they called Indiana Central then, but I think it's Indiana University now. But it was the United Brethren Church. And because at home I lived in the country, and I went to a country church called Mount Pleasant when I was at home at my parents' home. And then when I got married and went to Butler, which is only 2.5 miles up the road, well, I went to the church there in town, and I think they had maybe 200 and some attendants there. But that was the largest church I'd ever gone to. And of course, the church when I started here wasn't anything like it is now. I don't remember exactly how many we did have. Probably only in the neighborhood somewhere around
whether we had 300 or not, but the church just kept growing and growing.
What does First Church mean to you then?
Well, it just means a place where I feel that people are trying to live according to God's Word and to be used of Him in a ministry.
What do you think of the ministry?
Well, I think that it's, they're wonderful myself. I mean, I don't think that they're ministries that have been put together by man's planning. I believe they're ministries that have grown out of the leadership of God. People have gotten a vision, and then they have tried to, under God's guidance, just start from basic and keep expanding. I think especially that was the way it is with the networking ministries was a good example of that. But also, I never had any major teaching on the fruits of the Spirit and the spiritual ministries like I've received here, because it was, well, I don't know, more like you accepted the Lord and then you were more or less on your own, except when there were things you didn't understand, you prayed for the Lord to help you. But outside of that, it was more your own planning instead of a direct guidance from the Lord in the way of teaching. Now, personally, I had discovered some of that myself because I was in child evangelism and things. But as far as church-wise was concerned, that this was really the first church that I felt that really majored in teaching about like your ministry that you have to teach about the different, I don't want to say because half the time I can't think anymore, your ministries that you have a name where you have the different gifts of the Spirit, you know, and that, where you teach people if they feel they should be a teacher or what they should be, and you also have an evaluation sheet that will help people to, or help you to help people determine what their spiritual gifts are. I never heard of anything like that before. I just knew that some people seemed more gifted to do one thing than another, but I mean, I never knew it could be analyzed like that before. That was all something new to me.
Do you like what's happening to your great-grandchildren in this church?
Yes, I do. I wish they'd go more. But I got my one granddaughter to come one Sunday night, and she brought one girl, now she's got to get two. All she had to do was get exposed. Prior to that, she was going with a neighbor girl to a smaller church on Wednesday night because I guess she was kind of scared of a bigger church. Now, they'd come to church services, but like we were just informed by Lucy, you can't get acquainted with just coming into a church, Sunday morning church service. And you need to be involved in the other smaller groups. And that's what I've been trying to get her involved in now. This is my daughter that lives beside me's daughter. She has one in the 8th grade and one in the 6th grade. It's the 6th grade's coming. Now, the 8th grade will come if she had somebody her age, but she doesn't think it's right at all for her to come with her sister because her sister's in the 6th grade. She's in the 8th.
What do you think about, have you seen growth in John?
Yes, I've seen growth in John. He come to me in the beginning when he first felt that, well, when he was first asked to teach the Sunday school class, and asked me a good many questions and what he should do and what he should say and everything. And I tried to give him a few pointers, and I said, John, you're going to learn what to do and say as you're in the class. You just go and at first he was to give some lessons on his prophecy papers that he'd been writing, and I said, they'll ask you questions, just answer them. You know, I said, it's nothing unusual. It's just something that you just answer questions and give out information according to what you feel people want and need. And so he seldom ever comes to ask anything anymore. He probably could tell me now.
What's been your response to the building program?
Well, I'll tell you, I wish that I was a person that was blessed with a lot of money in that, but I'm not. But I do feel like that well, let's put it this way. I think God was behind this building program. Why else would we be filled up to full this quick? If we didn't need more space, it looks to me like we're going to have to do like we used to do. We used to make one space do for several things, and I guess that's beginning to happen here. Yeah. That's right. And there was two fields of thought, I know, because but I think both was right, and they have to learn to get along together. One was that it was up to what money you had and everything, to plan the best you could for current expenses and so on, and you didn't dare to go in debt, very far and so on, because you needed to meet your own expenses. There was another thought that we just trust God for everything, whether our own expenses are met or not, which the two had to get together, and I think they did that real well, because I feel that both happen. God expects us to meet our current expenses, but he also has his surprise gifts that he gives to us that we don't calculate on ourselves. We're not left to our own calculations. We're in it with God. And I think God's proved himself faithful a good many times, that we've got a lot of surprise gifts that we didn't know that made both possible, both the current expenses and the expenses of the building. And I think that's where prayer and faith come in. Faith in God's faithfulness. If we're on a project of his, he'll furnish the supplies. If we're on a project of our own, he doesn't promise to supply those supplies. But I think we've been on God's project.
Amen. That's good. All right.
Well said. Got your sermon.
Yeah, that's sort of material. Well, thank you so much.
Well, now that the main crew people showed up, we can start.
Oh, okay.
Off disappearing.
Yeah, had to get out of here for a moment.
Yeah, sure.
Yes. Okay, all right. Are you ready, Steve?
I think so.
All right. My golly. Hey, I think first one. How long have you been coming to First Church?
I was trying to think when I was driving over here, and it seems like started here maybe in the spring of '97. We'd attended here, my wife and I and our two oldest kids, in the early or late '70s, early '80s. Then we switched some churches, and then we really didn't go to church for a while, and then we went to a Methodist church starting in early '90s, and then our daughter started attending here, and I think you baptized her in April of '97, and that's when we really started coming consistently.
Well, how has your life changed since you started coming in '97?
Well, I think I can relate to that mostly in the last year or so. My life's really changed. This church is it's been where I've went to church ever since I was probably in first, second grade. But when I started really growing, I think, is in the last couple of years here at our new facilities here. And this is, we came out here on the walk that October, and we just, I've just started, being involved in a lot of different aspects of the church, signing up for things, doing things.
Tell me about Haiti.
I gave a testimony a couple of weeks ago, and my life has really changed dramatically in the last 6 months. I came back from Haiti. On the way back, I prayed to God, if He wanted me to do work in Haiti or some other area of mission work, I'd be glad to do that. And He's opened up a lot of avenues in missions. This last couple months, summer, I'm serving on the mission leadership team, helping to get that going here at the church. And now that at my testimony, I told the church that I've taken an assignment in Haiti for approximately 5.5 months, and we'll be down there till April, working at the new hospital in construction.
Who and why were you asked to go down and serve?
I was directly asked by Vic Binkley, but it's like I knew before he asked me something was happening. I could just feel things happening, and God was directing me in that way. So though Vic was the person I knew that asked me, I think as God was asking me to do this so He could work through me in Haiti. So basically, that's the way I feel about it anyway.
So in other words, you felt like the Holy Spirit really was
Right, right. Mm-hmm. And I kind of felt when I got back here in April, that what was really interesting, your very first sermon when we came back in April, you used a scripture that was on a card I picked up in Haiti. The very, very same scriptures I picked up on a card in Haiti, and that was your very first sermon, and it was about God. Before we're born, God calls us to do things that He had planned for us, and that really moved me. That that was your first sermon when I came back. So, and from then on, just all kinds of things like that that I'd pick up on at your sermons and books I would read and things like that.
So in other words, you're very convinced that it's God's purpose that all this takes place in your life.
Oh, definitely, yeah. I've been reading a lot of books and other things, and I'm in your AIM class, and we're reading the book Experiencing God, and that's when I read that book last week, or the first half of it. Everything in that was exactly as I experienced it, and up in, the 7 points of how God brings you into doing His work. So, and it just came just like that book had it, every step of the way. So yeah, I was convinced before I read that, but yeah, that just kind of solidified my thinking on it. So.
What makes you weep?
I was in, May or April, I was reading the Bible one morning, and I don't know why I read why I was reading it. My wife reads the Bible by one of these devotional books. There's things to read each day. So I was reading. I don't do it that way, but I was reading that day the way she did it, and came upon this one scripture as that God, let me think here, that the harvest is great, but there are few workers. So, that just really moved me and made me just, almost cry about it. So, that was a moving point in my life too. So.
Did you see yourself as one of those workers?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And I didn't know how God was going to lead me at that point. I think this was probably May or June, but I didn't know how God was going to lead me. I just felt, that Jim had called me about being on the mission leadership team, so I thought maybe that's the way I was going. So, and I'm still helping on that aspect of it, but then 6 weeks ago, Vic called me and wanted to know if I'd come down, and he had an opening to help down there. So, you can't really outguess God, I guess. So you just go the direction that He opens up to you. I think if your heart's open to doing, if you open your heart fully and say you'll go and do with no stipulations, I think then God opens up paths for you to follow.
Well, didn't you kind of have an experience like that? I mean, where you said, if I had an opportunity?
Yes, that happened. That happened in February of this year. Prior to that, I had you'd given a sermon, I think maybe a year and a half ago, and that was on doing the will of God. And if you're going to do that, you have to be able to commit yourself to moving out of your comfort zone and doing different things that you're not really comfortable with. And that morning, I felt to myself, I'd really like to go and do a mission trip, for a week, and but I'm thinking maybe I can't afford it, maybe I don't have the time, and I don't like to fly, so, Hades, you got to fly, there's no way to get there but flying, so I don't think God wanted to hear that kind of commitment, but later on, this was in February, I did make a commitment to some friends of ours and told them I'd like to go to Haiti. And that's when it really opened up. 6 days later, it was an opportunity to go. So, and that was just, just another sign that when you do commit yourself to doing God's work, then He'll provide the opportunities and the way to do it financially and any other way that needs to be done. So.
What do you want to accomplish in Haiti?
Well, I know God's using my physical talents. I've always worked with carpentry and craftsmanship, kind of a craftsman type person. So I know He's going to use me in that area, but I think He's going to really open me up to doing more work with people, maybe bringing people to God, or maybe helping them along with their life choices, From my 1 week in Haiti, it seems like the best way to change the conditions in Haiti is to help people, and once you start helping them, then you're going to win them to God. If you just go in there and try to win them to God without them trusting you and knowing that you're there to help and to work with them side by side and be their friends, I don't think you accomplish a whole lot if you just try to do it that way. But when you go in there and you make things that are going to stay, like the hospital that people are going to come and use from all over, then you're opening up your whole new realm of way to win people to God.
How is First Church? Have they helped you any with getting ready for going down there, or?
Well, spiritually, in many different ways. Yeah, spiritually they help. I'm really enjoying the couple of weeks that we've started the AIM class. I mean, that's helping me know a lot more about presenting the Bible and understanding the Bible and understanding the way God works. There's Chris DePope dropped off a prayer request list to her. Some Sunday school classes are going to be praying for missionaries, I think, in the next month, maybe November or something. So I dropped off a prayer request list to her. Financially, I understand the church is helping out some in that direction. So, yeah, my wife's been helpful to me. She's not going with me at this time. Her job is not one where she can pick up and leave. So we hope that, down the road that things might change. So, but right now I'll be down there by myself till April. So, and she's understanding about that. So,
what can we do to help you? What can the church do to help you?
The first thing, of course, is to keep me in your prayers, because Haiti's. We hope it's not going to be a lot of unrest down there, but they're going to have an election in November 26th of this year, and I don't think things are going to change dramatically. I think it's a foregone conclusion who's going to win, but there might be a lot of political unrest, demonstrations. There's even been talk of an embargo, so there could be some difficult times down there. So prayer requests, of course, those who feel that they would like to help financially, that would be helpful. I'm not financially rich. I'm giving up some of my income that I would be earning to go down there, and plane tickets and everything. And I'm going to be living in my own separate house down there, so I'll be buying food and other things down there. So any way that people feel that they can help, that would be great. But I think that what I really want is to be an example for First Church that other people can. I'm 53. Other people can pick up and do this and not just sit back and say, the time's not right. The time really wasn't right. The time's never right if you have that attitude. So I think you need to have an attitude where when God calls, you're ready to go. And if anything, I want to set an example that other people can do this. And we're trying to get the mission team going, and maybe that's how God wants to use me to help get missionary work really going strong here at this church.
Anything else?
Okay.
Do you have anything you just want to say that I didn't ask, that you were just all primed to do?
Well, I don't know if I mentioned this, but I've went to probably 8 or 10 different churches since I can remember, choosing churches on my own, and this church is actually where I feel is my home. The people that go here are my family, and you want to do whatever people want. You want to do things for people at this church, and you want to be with these people. You want to find reasons to be with people here at this church. So, I just feel like they're part of my extended family here.
The campaign that we're doing, the title is Building Lives. Do you think that we are doing that as a church?
Explain that.
Building lives.
Explain it.
The discipleship opportunities.
Do you think this campaign is building lives?
Well, not necessarily the campaign, but just the church.
The church.
Are we accomplishing that?
Well, I definitely think, without this campaign, this church is building lives. You see it, and I regret, I got 2 older kids, 2 younger kids, and my younger kids, we weren't going to church when they were young, and I struggle with that now because I see the families that come to church with their little kids, and I see the ones come with their teenagers, and I think I failed as a father by not doing that, and I think this church is accomplishing a lot when I see all the young kids, and from babies on up to kids that are out of high school and are unattached and still coming here, so.
Hey, thanks. Man, great job.
Better let somebody else take it.